Again, I'm Mann. The component of the study I'm looking at is if students who agree to help the experimenter have different personality characteristics compared to the general student body. One thing I'd like to cover is the Big Five. It's a concept in psychology about different personality traits. Traits and motives can be conceptualized as representing different levels of personality functioning. McKerchar and Costa posited that traits are enduring patterns of thoughts, feelings, and actions. At the broadest level, researchers have identified 5 common traits: agreeableness, extroversion, openness, neuroticism, and conscientiousness. To break down those 5 and what they mean for people, agreeableness usually is associated with warm, pleasant, and friendly traits. Extroversion is associated with sociability, assertiveness, positive emotions, and activity and following up on actions. Openness to experience shows curiosity and tendency to try new things. Neuroticism is associated with negative emotions and emotional instability. Conscientiousness shows responsibility, dependability, thoroughness, and ambitiousness. In our original study, we conducted an experiment where the dependent variable was willingness to help a professor by filling out a brief personality survey. The personality survey consisted of a few questions about study behaviors and liking to think, as well as the Big Five inventory I just mentioned. Everyone who participated in this part of the study was operationally defined as a helpful person already. Although we did not find any main effects for the situational variables manipulated in the original study, we wondered if there were personality differences between the helpful people who assisted and the general student population. We hypothesized that if there were differences, it would most likely be the personality traits of agreeableness, because these people are usually nice and friendly, and conscientiousness, because they are responsible and prone to feel helpful. There were 96 helpful students who took part in the survey during this study. There were 214 surveys that had been previously completed during 2 emotion studies conducted by Dr. Dempsey in the past 5 years. All participants were from PSY 201 general psychology courses. By using the 214 previous surveys as a comparison group, we were able to see if any differences existed between these helpful students and the general population. We ran an ANOVA for each of the Big Five traits. There was a significant difference for the trait of conscientiousness and extroversion. We did not find a significant difference for agreeableness, neuroticism, or openness. Consistent with our hypothesis, the helpful sample was significantly higher on conscientiousness than the general sample. This went along with what we thought as far as conscientiousness influencing people's desire to help. Surprisingly, the helpful sample was higher on extroversion than the general sample, and there were no differences in agreeableness for helping in the general samples, for helpful people compared to the general samples. We were not expecting the extroversion, and we were surprised that agreeableness, since it usually is associated with agreeing to do things that they did not agree to help. Several explanations have been offered in previous literature for the relatively modest, inconsistent, significant relations between traits and social behaviors. One that I feel is more related possibly to some of our results, investigators may not have focused upon the traits that were most conceptually relevant. By looking back at past literature, we find that extroversion is actually highly linked to volunteering behavior. It's usually associated with people's ability to act on their desire to help. They're more outgoing, more willing to actually produce actions. Just being agreeable doesn't necessarily mean you will follow through. Also, there are issues with the relations between traits and social behaviors that may be mediated by motives. So even though you have a trait to be agreeable, your other motives might overlie the fact that you're agreeable. If your motive is that you're in a hurry to be somewhere, then you might not have time to stop and help someone because that motive overrides the trait to want to help at that moment. There are also interactions between traits with other traits, like the fact that it has been linked that agreeableness and extroversion together would actually push someone to do something, not just agreeableness alone. And that traits might interact with the motives. So sometimes you might be motivated and the trait assists the motive or goes against it. They could be in conflict. So in conclusion, we have supported some of the hypotheses, and we can find past research that supports some of what we found, but definitely more research needs to be done to figure out exactly how they interact and what types of situations lead to which behaviors. There's far more complex things in action than just one personality trait influencing someone's behavior. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question for